What's up, ladies, gentlemen, people, extraterrestrial aliens, and everything in between? I know I've been on a long hiatus, but I have returned just in time to make some playoff predictions. With the introduction of Kiriko into the league, the meta should be pretty open, and I'm expecting teams to mostly just stick to their comfort picks unless Kiriko is super broken. But yeah, with all intros out of the way, let's get into the predictions. Starting off with the first game, we have a 2018 Grand Finals rematch between the London Spitfire and the Philly Fusion. This should be a very interesting game to start us off. On one hand, the London Spitfire have the higher seed and have been pretty consistent all year with a few upset wins to their name. On the other hand, the Fusion have been pretty mid for most of the regular season but always manage to turn it up when it matters most in those tournament games. But who comes out on top? We have to take into account that Zest may not be able to play due to his arm injury. Will Carpe and MN3 be able to carry the weight left behind? I'm gonna say yes. Despite not being the same consistent hard carry, Carpe and MN3 were able to take Seoul to a map 5. If they can manage to get around the Spitfire's Rhine comp, then it shouldn't be too difficult. But on the other side of things, the Spitfire have a few tricks up their sleeve as well. Sparker on Sojourn could really put the Fusion in trouble if they aren't prepared. The Sparker vs MN3 duel should be pretty epic. At the end of the day though, I'm taking Fusion in a map 5. The Spitfire have shown clear weaknesses against top teams and feel very predictable. Fusion are gonna read the Spitfire's game and win for Zest in front of the Californian crowd. Next we have a Chinese showdown between the Spark and the Dragons. This one could honestly go either way. The Spark have managed to get hot just at the right time. They're starting to look like the 2020 dynasty all over again. They were inconsistent throughout the regular season. They're catching heat at just the right time. They brought an unused player into the lineup last second. The meta could be perfect for them, and they're led by Chengun. Sounds very familiar, doesn't it? However, the Dragons are no easy opponent, because they have Lip. The Shy-Lip matchup should be pretty interesting, considering both are pretty evenly matched on paper. However, where things get a little more interesting is at Flex DPS. The introduction of Pineapple into the lineup has made things very interesting for the Spark. His Tracer was able to bring them success in 2 out of their 3 previous games, but at the same time Flater seems to be looking like his old self again. But the question for both teams is, will they run their Tracer player, or their Genji player? For both of these teams, a lot of their success this season came from running Genji comps with Alpha and Huayu respectively. But with Genji potentially getting nerfed into the ground, I kind of expect both teams to go with the Tracer, and if that's the case, I think I slightly favor the Spark. Fuck it, I'm going with the Spark 3-1. I don't know, man, the Spark seem to have new life in them. Every other year Chengun goes on a massive playoff run. Season 1 with the Spitfire, Season 3 with the Dynasty, and I think this year will continue this pattern. This is all just a gut feeling. Dragons in all likelihood will win this game, but I'm gonna go with a wild bread and hope it works out. Now we have what should be a relatively straightforward matchup with only a bit of upset potential. The Atlanta Reign taking on the Florida Mayhem. This is playoffs Atlanta we are talking about, and although Florida looked pretty dominant in the play-ins, Atlanta should be on a whole nother level here. Kai is gonna pop the hell off. Hydran doesn't even stand a chance if Kai is feeling it. The rest of the team except maybe someone and Checkmate get stiffed as well. This should be like a 3-1 for the Reign. Mayhem could come out with some interesting double flex support comp, but the Reign can always just mirror it and play it better. And for the final game of round 1 we have game 6 of a pretty epic rivalry that's been going on this season, the Outlaws taking on the Defiant. These two teams have met up in every tournament and are now meeting up in the playoffs. The record between these two is currently 3-2 in favor of the Defiant, so it should be pretty interesting to see how this one goes. The Defiant are coming into the playoffs in my opinion as the worst team. Their DPS and tank line just feel a tier below everyone else, and I think the Outlaws can capitalize on this despite full-on sandbagging the final week of the regular season. The Outlaws have been at top form when they're actually trying, The trade for Creative, while it was questionable at first, has seemed to do a lot of good for the team. His BAP is surprisingly good considering we all thought he was just an Ana one trick, and combined with the power of Lestro they make sort of a power duo. This along with Dante spreading his wings and showing us he isn't just a Doom one trick in the second half of the year, playing all kinds of things like Junker Queen Diva or Orisa and Zarya, and even diffing some of the best players like Kaluj and Hanbin. And then add Merit and Pelican on top of that, and I think you have a pretty convincing Outlaws sweep here. Outlaws are gonna prove why that final week was just them not trying and come out swinging here in their first game. Now we move on to round 2, and starting with the number 1 seeded Dallas Fuel, I'm predicting that they will select the Philly Fusion. The Dallas Fuel are gonna be hungry for revenge after what happened to them in the mid-season madness. Philly absolutely embarrassed them in that game, and because they most likely won't have Zest, this should be a no-brainer for the Fuel. Even if the Zarya nerfs do come through, Hanban should still be able to carry the weight on whatever the team needs him to play. Maybe we get some Diva/Sigma out of him. Either way, the power of a vastly superior backline and an actual flex DPS should give the Dallas Fuel the victory in a 3-1. I'm gonna say Fusion take a map just purely off of MN3 on a sniper map like Circuit Royale or Junkertown. But aside from that, Fuel should breeze through. Now on to seed number 2, which is the San Francisco Shock. And I'm gonna say they pick the Spark as their first opponent. Even though Spark will have looked good in their first game against the Dragons, the Shock are head and shoulders above the Spark in almost every area. Pineapple is a good tracer, until Proper comes in and Goomba stomps him. Kaluj outruns Burner. The supports are mid compared to Violet and Finn. However, where the Spark could take advantages at Hitscan, Shy in my opinion is better than Kilo Striker and Sam. His Sombra and Sojourn have looked very strong recently. However, if that's their only win condition, they are living on a prayer. As much as I want to see the Spark make the run back, it'll have to happen in the losers bracket. Shock's sweep. Seed number 3, the back-to-back stage champions and who some might consider the favorites, the Los Angeles Gladiators. These boys are gonna be fired up playing in front of a home crowd. I'm gonna say they picked the Atlanta Reign as their first opponent, considering they've only dropped a single map to them this whole season. Although playoffs Atlanta is real, it will have to happen in the lower bracket yet again. Glads are gonna take this 3-1. While Kai and Speedily could pop off for a map or so, it's just an all-around team diff. Kefster diffs Venom on Tracer and Speedily on pretty much everything except maybe Echo. Rhina feels more well-rounded than Hawk, and Shoe Skewed Funny Astro diffs the hell out of UVOG and Vigilante. Again, I think Rain will take a map because of Kai, but in the end Glads are gonna push through and win pretty convincingly. If the bracket goes the way I'm predicting, which it most definitely will not, then that would leave the Soul Dynasty, which a lot of people are considering the favorites, to play the Houston Outlaws. Outlaws are looking scary, which is why I think all the other top-seeded teams are gonna try to avoid them, but the Dynasty aren't scared. These guys have playoffs profit, which needs no explanation. They have the best tank player in the entire game, 2 top-tier DPS partners in Fitz and Stalker, and the best main support in the league alongside an upper half pushing top 5 flex support. But the Outlaws are no easy foe. It's important to mention here that both Creative and Iris will be playing their former team, so which one will come out on top? Well, despite all I've said about the Outlaws, I still have to pick the Dynasty in a 3-2. These two teams could be relatively even on paper. The Dynasty have a stronger dive while the Outlaws have a stronger double flex rush, and add in a live crowd in the back and you have one hell of a game. But like I said before, the Dynasty should be walking away with this one despite Merit and Pelican kicking and screaming to try and win. Now let's talk about the first round of the lower bracket. If everything aligns, which it most likely will not, then the first game of the lower bracket will be a rematch between the Rain and the Spitfire. The issue here is that only so many teams can go on an epic lower bracket run. Taking a look at either side, we have a pretty epic hitscan duel on paper. Kai vs Sparkar should be pretty interesting, and then Hawk vs Hardy should be pretty fun as well. However, the Rain on paper have the advantage. but we said the exact same thing every time these two teams have played, and the Spitfire came out on top 2 out of 3 times. Sorry to say it, but I have the Spitfire taking it in 5. Rain can only go on so many lower bracket runs. They just don't seem to have an answer to the Trine comp that the Spitfire love oh so much. The one time they beat them was when the Spitfire couldn't play the Rhine comp, but now that the Jotes Metu is over, there's no reason for the Spitfire not to run their signature Rhine comp. So sorry Atlanta fans, but this is where I think their season will end. Next game is a rematch between the Spark and the Dragons, and I know I said the Spark could go on a lower bracket run and be the 2020 dynasty all over again, but realistically, it's a stretch, and like I said before, there's only so many teams who can go on a lower bracket run. I'm gonna say the Dragons fire up and get their revenge in an epic 5-map series. Flayt is gonna turn up the heat, and combined with the power of Lip and the rest of the team, nothing can get in the Dragons' way to unfortunately eliminate the Spark. Then we have the Houston Outlaws taking on the Florida Mayhem. After getting their first ever playoff win in franchise history, the Houston Outlaws will be all fired up to beat the next team in their way. Sorry to say it Mayhem fans, but the Red Hot Outlaws are looking to eliminate the lower half teams and they're gonna sweep. Funny thing is that the Outlaws have only ever beaten the Mayhem and the Defiant in any game that isn't the regular season, and my bracket is funnily enough sticking to this pattern. But back to what I was saying, Marged and Rupal don't stand a chance against the power of Lestro and Creative, but Hydran and Checkmate could make things interesting, but Merit and Pelican I still feel are better. However, someone could show up big time in playoffs. His flexibility has been a real strong point for the team, but I don't think it will be enough. The Mayhem have surpassed so many expectations this season, but this is where this young team's journey must come to an end. Boy did the Fusion score lucky here. No zest, and they get to play the worst team in the bracket. Defiant try as they might, but Fusion will stand tall. I'm taking Fusion in a 3-1 as the Defiant end their season in the most midway possible. Now I'm gonna briefly run through the rest of my winners bracket. Going back up to the top, we have the Dynasty taking on the Fuel. This one is gonna be a banger. These two are so evenly matched on paper. Edison versus Fitz, Sparkle versus Prophet, Smurf versus Hanbin, Fielder versus Iris, Vindame versus Chio, former teammates for crying out loud. Chio and Vindame both fought for a spot in the starting lineup back on 02. This is a battle for the ages. Who knows, this one could even go to 6 maps, and it's a real coin flip on paper, so fuck it, I'm gonna spin the wheel to decide who I go with. Well, the wheel has spoken. I will be going with the Dallas Fuel in a 5-map baller. This is one for the ages. A large fraction of the best players this league has to offer will be going at it, and the Fuel will prevail. Their off-tank-led compositions will slightly outdo the Dynasty's dive, but it will be close, no doubt about it. Next is an epic battle for California. Not only a battle for California, but a battle for California in front of a Californian crowd. Holy shit, I'm looking forward to this one. But in the end I just have this gut feeling that Glads will win. They really haven't won enough games against the Shock this season, so I'm gonna say they win in 5. Proper will have the carry performance of his life, but in the end it won't be enough to get through Kefster and the boys. This is gonna be the game where Happy proves to everyone why he was the one signed to this team to replace Sons and Patifan. He's gonna show why he was the chosen one. But this one is also a coin flip, could go either way. And now for the winners finals between the Fuel and the Glads. Boy, what a game this will be. Live audience. These two teams are 2-2 this season, and this could be the most important game of the season for either side. Who wins? Well, for me at least, I have to go with the Fuel. As sad as it is to say it, the Glads are just not the same undisputed #1 team without Patifan. The Fuel are just so unbelievably strong at their peak. This one will be close, don't get me wrong, and honestly I think the Glads have a better DPS and arguably support line, but peak fuel man, Hanbin, it's all about Hanbin. If he starts feeling it, there's nothing getting in the fuel's way, so that's why I will be picking them in a 5 and maybe even 6 map baller, as they will lock in their ticket to the grand finals. Now let's move back down to the lower bracket. These are gonna go by super quick. Spitfire versus Dragons. Dragons take it in a sweep. A team like the Dragons shouldn't have any trouble getting through such a predictable team like the Spitfire, as they move forward, keeping their back-to-back dreams alive. Fusion versus Outlaws. No Zest, no win. If Zest were here I could go with a 5-map game, but either way, Zest or not, I'm going with the Outlaws. 3-1 because MN3 alone isn't enough to match both Pelican and Merit. However, MN3 versus Merit could be a super interesting duel if we get a sniper map. Cross your fingers for that. Moving deeper into the bracket, we have game number 9 this season between the Dynasty and the Dragons. These teams have been rivals for 3 years now, and it's been back and forth between these two teams this season. But ladies, gentlemen, people, extraterrestrial aliens and everything in between, I'm going to predict that history repeats itself. 2 years ago the Dynasty upset the Dragons in the Final Four, eliminating them and taking their spot in the Grand Finals, and I foresee it happening again. The Dynasty will kill the hopes and dreams of back-to-back titles for the Dragons, and eliminate the Dragons 3-1. They will get the final laugh in this epic rivalry, or at least until next year. Then we have another epic rivalry matchup, Shock and Outlaws, O2 DPS line versus O2 DPS line, Dante versus his former team, and so much on the line. This one is a real coin flip, but you know what, I don't care if people call me a Shock hater. I fully believe in the Outlaws to make the lower bracket run. Every year except Season 2 there's always one team in the Final Four who isn't top 5, in Season 1 it was the Fusion, Season 3 it was the Dynasty, and Season 4 it was the Shock. I'm gonna say this pattern continues. In very surprising fashion the Outlaws will overcome the Shock in 5 and eliminate the three-peat Dreams. They did it once before. Who says they can't do it again? Again Proper is gonna be kicking and screaming his way to victory, but it won't be enough. Outlaws will push on forward to the Final Four time baby. First up is a rematch between the Dynasty and the Outlaws, but unlike last time, the Outlaws are gonna be kind of burnt out from their map 5, so this time it will be a sweep for the Dynasty, as the Outlaws lower bracket run comes to an end. And now, we're on to the Losers Finals, a game that people have been waiting for ever since the start of the mid-season madness. It's the Kickoff Clash Champions versus the Kickoff Clash Champions. After how hard the Dynasty choked the mid-season madness after being a lot of people's favorites, they're gonna be hungry for revenge, and this game has been a long time coming. We were all disappointed to not see this one in the mid-season madness, but here on the final day of playoffs in front of a live crowd, the two luchadors will finally brawl it out. Let's take a look at all the matchups on paper. Prophet versus Kefster. So even on paper, I'd give the slightest edge to Kefster though. Happy versus Fitz, I'd give the slight edge to Fitz, but both are great. Smurf versus Reiner, Smurf no question. And then for the support side, say Glads for being a bit more flexible. So it's 2-2 on paper, but like I said before, the Glads aren't that same team without Patifan. They don't have that same magic, they don't have that extra push, that extra clutch factor. It's so unfortunate that their campaign as the favorites had to be destroyed just because of his injury. Just think about how many games they had where he was the clutch factor. For this reason, I'm picking the Dynasty in a 5-map bloodbath. It will be close, round 3 on control, but in the end the power of playoffs Prophet will come alive. But now, for the moment you've all been waiting for, it's the grand finals, between the Seoul Dynasty and the Dallas Fuel. Winner takes home the grand prize of $1 million. This game, the most important game of the season, just like a lot of other games in this tournament, is pretty 50-50, but in a wild turn of events I'm actually going to be selecting the Dynasty to win and take home the trophy 4-2. Previously they will have lost to the Dallas Fuel, and boy oh boy will they be hungry for revenge. They'll come back swinging and get their revenge to win it all. they just feel more well-rounded. Fuel, while they are unstoppable at their peak, just feel a lot less flexible. If Seoul can find a counter to some of their best comps like Zarya, Fuel may not have an answer. Adding on to that, there's been a pattern every season that one of the top two teams in the first stage/tournament always takes the trophy. Season 1 it was the Spitfire who won Stage 1, Season 2 it was the Shock who finished second Stage 1, Season 3 it was the Shock again after being tied for the winners of the May Melee with the Dragons, Season 4 it was the Dragons who finished second in the May Melee, and I see this pattern continuing with the Dynasty taking home the trophy after previously winning the kickoff clash. Even though they disappointed last time we had a global tournament, they're gonna prove to everyone why that was just a fluke. They're gonna win it all in front of the Anaheim crowd, and I'm gonna be there. I managed to grab a hold of a ticket for the final day, and boy am I excited. But yeah, that's about it. These are my 2022 Overwatch League playoff predictions. If you enjoyed, make sure to like and subscribe for more. And don't forget to join our community Discord server, link in the description. We may be a small community right now, but we can grow quickly. But until next time, bye bye.